I'm sure you've gone through the process of developing a signature. I think it's one of, I don't know if it was for you. For me, it was one of the most interesting things to, when I started developing a signature, and I was given to understand, at that time at least, that once you have a signature, you've got to keep it for your whole life long. So I was very particular as to how I developed my signature. I was fascinated by my father's signature a lot, and as to actually practice that as well. For you know what. Well, my father also came to know for what. But I was so fascinated by it that my present signature, that is more a consistent one that I have now for many years, but it has a portion of my father's signature actually in it. And along with that, it also has nearly at least an alphabet from all the 4 names that I have. So it's kind of a concise form of my name. It's kind of sophisticated, so it takes a bit of time to actually put it down. Now, if I'm signing an official document, I'm very particular about how I put down my signature. If it is with the bank, or if it's a property document connected to our houses, and when I was the director, we had to sign it. And so I'd be very careful about how I put my signature down there. But then there were also times when I had to put my signature on papers that were not that official. For example, when I was director in the retreat center, I had to send out birthday cards, and that would not be just in the Christmas cards or Easter cards, and that would just not be in. We're not talking about just 50s and 60s. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds. So I have to sign all that, and it's terribly cramping on the fingers when you have it. When you have a complicated signature, and you need to get it right as well, it's really a pain. So that's another attitude, when it is a pain for me to actually sign it. Then there's an attitude when we have the delivery guys come in, and they need us to sign what we are collecting. Nowadays, they do it on the iPad, and it's electronically, and initially I tried to get it right, and then now you realize that whatever you do, it doesn't look like your signature at all. And so nowadays I'm least bothered. I just do something and I send it off. I'm least bothered. So there are 3 attitudes. One, where I have a lot of intensity when it's something official. Then the other, which kind of is a pain for me. And the third is where I'm least bothered about it, but I'm putting my signature there. Today we celebrate the feast of the exaltation of the cross. One way of exalting the cross in our common life today is the way we sign ourselves with the cross. That is one way of exalting the cross. I know there's a deep theology about the exaltation of the cross, but I'm talking about something that's more common to us and something that we do very often, and trying to understand how we sign ourselves with the cross and why that is important as well. There are different traditions to making the sign of the cross. There's an Eastern tradition to it, and there is the Western tradition to it as well. And actually, both interpretations are different. And we'd find that very surprising. But that's because the theology behind it is different as well. It's not that anything is right or wrong. It's just different understandings of it. And I think that kind of makes it even more richer. I know in many of the Eastern rites, even when they make the sign of the cross, they use the thumb, the index finger, and the middle finger together when they make the sign of the cross. We usually do it just with this, but they use the 3 fingers, and that's to indicate the Holy Trinity. And that is why they make the sign of the cross with all the 3 fingers. For some, when they make the sign of the cross, they don't just go from the head to the heart, rather they go from the head to the stomach. And that is to get a more perfect dimension of the cross. And apart from that, also with an understanding or an interpretation that Jesus was born in the womb of Mary, and so the stomach indicating that as well. While in the Latin tradition, you have it from the head to the heart. So the symbolism is that of the heart. Then you have the cross where it goes from the right to the left, or in certain traditions, from the left to the right. So when we do it here in the Latin tradition, it is in the name of the Father, Son, and of the Holy Spirit, from the left to the right. And that indication is the left is things of negativity or things of darkness, and from the darkness to the light, which is Christ, that is on the right. While in the Eastern tradition, it goes from the right to the left. So it is taking Jesus into the darkness and then bringing light. So it's not that anything is right or wrong. It's just the richness of the interpretations. Pope Leo III would give an understanding of the right to the left as being from the Jews to the Gentiles. So just see how beautifully it is. It's just all these different interpretations of it. And I'm not saying in any way that something is right or something's wrong. It's just the interpretations of what it has been. But what is very, very important is how from the early church, making the sign of the cross was a clear indication of what we believed in and what we proclaimed to the world as well. From the church fathers of, say, Tertullian, who would always say in all our movements, in our coming and going, in our putting of our shoes, in the bath, when we are lighting our candles, when we are in employment, we make the sign of the cross. This is Church Father Tertullian saying, even when I put on my shoes. Or like Saint Cyril of Alexandria speaking and saying that in everything, in our coming and going, in our traveling, in our lying down and in our rest, we make the sign of the cross. And that sign of the cross is made with the same intensity every time. Unlike when I give my signature, and I'm sure you do the same as well. When we put our signatures, and the intensity changes according to what we are doing. If it's official, my intensity is more. If it's not official, I don't mind if I get it wrong. But that cannot be with a cross. With a cross, the intensity has to be there all the time. And that is because making the sign of the cross has a meaning in it. In the Syro-Malabar Rite from where I come, and I think it's the same in all over the state of Kerala, in our language, in Malayalam, there's a way they make the sign of the cross, and that's called a solemn sign of the cross. So there's a smaller sign of the cross, which is this. Then there's a solemn sign of the cross, which is this. And what that basically says is, through the sign of the Holy Cross, protect me from my enemies, O Lord, in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. I don't know if I've given the translation perfectly, but in Malayalam it sounds amazingly beautiful. So, through the sign of the Holy Cross, protect me from my enemies, O Lord, in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. So that is what we are doing every time we make the sign of the cross. We are blessing in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit through the power of the cross, whatever we are doing. And that is why when Tertullian says, even when I tie my shoelace and I put on my shoe, and I make the sign of the cross. If I'm taking my car and I'm driving, I make the sign of the cross. By the cross, I am protected. When I'm in a restaurant and I'm going to have my meal, don't shorten it. Don't shorten it like it is an embarrassment for us. Don't shorten it that it is hard for us to go from the top to the bottom. We have here in the summer season, you have to in Australia put sunscreen if you're going out to the beach. You don't just put sunscreen in certain portions, right? When we put our sunscreen, we cover ourselves completely in it so that we are protected. How much more important is it to protect ourselves with a beautiful signing of the cross? Be very careful how we sign ourselves with the cross. Some things in our life we do subconsciously. I would say signing ourselves with the cross should not be a subconscious act. It should be a conscious act. Because then I remind myself of every promise that lies with signing myself with the cross. And so the intensity increases as well. For the others, it might not mean much. And therefore, don't be afraid that it is going to be embarrassing to do it in public. We read in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 18. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 18. For the message about the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, those who don't know him. It's foolishness. But to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. So every time I sign myself with a cross, with that same intensity, I'm reminding myself about the power of the cross. Don't be embarrassed, ever, and don't shorten it ever, because the Lord came down onto the earth, never took a shortcut, took the pain of the cross, and he brought salvation to us. And every time we sign ourselves with it, we remember, we acknowledge, we respect the sacred sign of the cross. Let's close our eyes for a moment.